close your eyes for a moment, not because you're tired, though perhaps you are, but because I want you to try something. I want you to strip away everything you know about nighttime. Strip away the streetlights humming faintly outside your window. Strip away the glow of the phone you put face down on the nightstand. Strip away the distant sound of a car engine, a neighbour's television, an air conditioning unit cycling on and off somewhere down the hall. Take all of that away. Every single layer of modern light and noise and comfort. And ask yourself, what's left? What does the night actually look like when no human hand has ever switched on a single bulb? What does silence actually sound like when it isn't just the absence of technology, but the presence of something ancient and enormous and alive? That is where we are going tonight. Not to some imagined place, not to a fantasy. We are going back 30, 40, 50,000 years to stand at the edge of a dying afternoon on a planet that was, in every practical sense, a completely different world. And we're going to stay there until morning. We're going to listen. We're going to breathe. And somewhere along the way, I think you're going to feel something settle in you. Something that has been wound tight all day finally beginning to loosen. Because here is the thing that nobody tells you. Your body already knows how to do this. It has been doing this for hundreds of thousands of years. Long before there were mattresses or heating systems or electric lights, there was this, the gradual darkening of the sky, the cooling of the air, the narrowing of the world down to a circle of warmth, and then finally, sleep. Your nervous system was calibrated for exactly this kind of night, and tonight, that's what we're going to give it. So let's begin at the beginning, at the moment the sun starts to go down. It is sometime in the late Pleistocene epoch. If you're looking for a specific number, let's say roughly 45,000 years ago, you are somewhere in what will one day be called Europe, though that name, and every other name for every other place on this planet, is still tens of thousands of years away from being invented. There are no borders here. No countries, no languages in the sense we understand them today. There is only land, and it is vast. The plain stretching out before you is enormous. Miles and miles of open grassland, broken here and there by dark tangles of forest, and the silver glint of a river winding through the low hills to the west. The sky's the colour of embers, deep orange near the horizon bleeding upward into violet, then a blue so dark and clear it almost looks liquid. You have never seen a polluted sky. You have never seen smog. The air you're breathing right now has never been touched by industrial exhaust, by diesel engines, by factory smokestacks. It is just air. Clean, cold, carrying the smell of dried grass and turned earth and something else. Something sharper, animal, alive. The temperature is dropping. You can feel it happening minute by minute as the sun slides lower. An hour ago it was perhaps 55 degrees. Now it is closer to 45. By the time full dark arrives, it will be somewhere in the mid-30s. This is late autumn, the time of year when the cold makes its first serious claim on the world, and every living thing on this plain is paying attention. In the middle distance, maybe half a mile away, a small group of people is moving. There are perhaps 15 of them, men, women, children, an older woman who moves more slowly than the others, but who everyone seems to orbit around without quite meaning to. They are carrying things, bundles of dried wood gathered from the forest edge, animal hides, scraped clean and folded, a haunch of something large, still on the bone, dark with smoke and age. They are walking with purpose, but not with panic. They know where they're going. They have been here before, and where they're going is toward the cave. It sits at the base of a limestone outcropping about 100 yards ahead. Not a grand cavern, not the kind of place that echoes with your voice, but a deep, sheltered overhang with a natural rock wall at the back and enough ceiling to stand under. The entrance faces south, away from the worst of the winter wind. Someone, or many someones over many generations, has piled stones at the entrance in a low curved barrier that channels the airflow and keeps the interior warmer than the outside by 10 or 15 degrees. This is not a permanent home, but tonight it is home. And as the last of the day's warmth bleeds out of the stone beneath your feet, everyone is feeling the pull of it. Children who were still running and chasing each other 20 minutes ago have gone quiet. They press close to the adults now, not from fear exactly, but from instinct. From 10,000 generations of knowing that when the light goes, you get close to the people you trust. The fire comes first. Always the fire. One of the men kneels at the entrance of the cave and begins to work at the small nest of tinder he carries in a folded piece of bark. Dried grass, shredded bark, a few flakes of something that looks almost like dust. He cradles it against his body to keep the wind off it. He strikes flint against iron pyrite, and the sparks fall. One catches. He bends slowly and blows, one long, even breath, and a thread of smoke rises, and then a flame the size of a thumbnail, and then, as dry wood is fed to it piece by careful piece, the fire blooms outward, catches the evening air, and sends a wash of amber light across the stone face of the overhang. There is a sound, not quite a cheer, not quite a sigh, from the people gathered around, something between relief and gratitude. In all the tens of thousands of years of human life before this moment, that sound has never changed. The fire is lit. We are going to be all right. High above, to the east, the first star appears. In a few minutes there will be 2, then 10. Then the sky will be absolutely covered in them. More stars than you have ever seen in your life, more than most modern humans will ever see, because there is nothing for 1,000 miles in any direction to wash them out. The Milky Way will arc from one horizon to the other like a river of cold light, and the people gathered around this small fire will look up at it the way you might look at a fireplace, not with wonder exactly, though there is wonder in it, but with a kind of familiarity. This is the ceiling they have always had. These are the lights they have always known. But they are not looking at the stars yet. Not tonight. Not at this hour. Right now, they are watching the plain. And what is moving on the plain as the sun disappears is worth watching. Far out across the grassland, maybe 2 miles, maybe 3, something enormous is walking. A shape against the fading sky, massive, rounded at the shoulders, moving with a slow, deliberate rhythm that you can actually feel through the soles of your feet if you stand still enough. A mammoth, a single bull by the looks of it, heading north toward water. His tusks catch the last of the light, and for a moment he seems almost luminous. This vast animal against a darkening sky, utterly indifferent to the tiny glowing point of light at the base of the cliff. He is not a threat tonight. The people in the cave know this the way they know most things about the animals on this plain, not from a book, not from a diagram, but from a lifetime of watching. The mammoth does not hunt. The mammoth does not come close to fire. The mammoth is simply the mammoth, moving through his world and their world on whatever ancient path his instincts are following. What they are watching for is smaller, faster, with teeth, but we will come to that. For now, for just these first few minutes while the sky still holds its last light and the fire is just beginning to build real heat, let us simply be here. Let us listen to the plain going quiet around us, to the fire's small voice growing stronger, to the shuffle of feet and the murmur of voices as 15 human beings arrange themselves around the warmth and begin the oldest ritual in the world, The night is beginning, and we have a long way to go before morning. There is a particular kind of work that happens in the first hour of darkness. Not the dramatic work of hunting or making tools that belongs to daylight. This is the quieter, more deliberate work of building safety, of turning a raw piece of geography into something that feels, at least for one night, like it might hold. Watch the older man near the cave entrance. He's perhaps 40 years old, which in this world makes him one of the elders, one of the people whose experience carries enormous weight. He is not moving fast. He's moving carefully, the way someone moves when they know exactly what they're doing, and understand that doing it right matters more than doing it quickly. He's checking the stone barrier at the entrance, pressing his palm against each rock, nudging one slightly to close a gap where the wind has been finding its way through. It seems small, this adjustment, a few inches. But the cold on a night like this does not need much of a gap to make itself at home. He knows this. His hands know it before his mind does. 2 younger men are working at the sides of the cave entrance, wedging branches, thick ones, cut from a fallen tree a few days ago and carried here for exactly this purpose, into the natural crevices in the rock wall. They are building a kind of screen, not solid enough to block all the cold, but enough to break the wind's direct path into the cave. They work without instructions, without a foreman, without anyone telling them where to put things. This is knowledge that has been passed from hands to hands for longer than memory goes. You learn by watching. You learn by being here when it's done. Inside the cave, the women are arranging the sleeping spaces. This is its own form of architecture, done with hides and gathered grasses and the placement of bodies in relation to warmth. The fire will be kept near the entrance, not so close that it's a hazard, not so far in that its smoke has nowhere to go, and the people will sleep in a rough semicircle behind it, the smallest children in the warmest centre, the adults radiating outward. The person who draws night watch will sleep closest to the entrance, where the cold is sharpest, where any sound from outside arrives first. Nobody assigns these positions. They have been worked out over years, over lifetimes, over generations of sleeping in this cave and caves like it. There is a grammar to this space that everyone speaks fluently. Where you sleep tells you and everyone else where you stand, not in terms of status so much as function. Who is a light sleeper? Who wakes fast? Who can be trusted to stay awake when staying awake is what's needed? Tonight, the person who will take the first watch is a young woman, maybe 19, 20 years old. She has done this before. Not every night, the watching rotates, but often enough that it has become something she is known for. She has good ears and, more importantly, she has the disposition for it. Some people cannot tolerate the quiet alone. Their minds fill it up with noise. She's not like that. She can sit in silence for hours and be comfortable there, alert but not anxious, listening without flinching at every sound. It is a gift, this temperament, and the group knows it and values it in the way they value everything useful, quietly, without ceremony, by simply relying on it. She takes her position near the entrance now, wrapped in a heavy hide that comes up over her head, her knees drawn close to her body for warmth, her eyes on the space beyond the stone barrier where the firelight fades and the darkness begins. She's not afraid, or rather, she's afraid in the way that everyone who has grown up on the Pleistocene plain is afraid of darkness, which is to say she takes it seriously without being paralyzed by it. Fear, out here, is just information. It tells you to pay attention, and she is very, very good at paying attention. Outside, the plain is settling into its nighttime arrangements. The herbivores, the horses, the aurochs, the reindeer moving in loose bands across the grass, have shifted their behaviour. They bunch tighter at night, the way prey animals always do. There is safety in proximity. More eyes, more ears, more chances that something will notice the predator before the predator completes its approach. They will not stop moving entirely, but they will slow down, their heads swinging more frequently to check the perimeter, their nostrils working constantly at the dark air. The predators, meanwhile, are just beginning to wake up. This is worth understanding, because it is one of the things that makes the Ice Age night fundamentally different from a modern night, in a way that goes beyond aesthetics. When the sun sets on this plane, the balance of power shifts. Humans are extraordinary daytime animals. They see in colour, they track over long distances, they communicate and coordinate in ways that give them enormous advantages when they can see what they're doing. But after dark, those advantages shrink. Their eyes, while decent, are not built for true darkness. They cannot track by scent the way a wolf can. They cannot hear a footfall 50 yards away through tall grass the way a cave lion can. What they have is fire. And fire, on a night like this, is everything. The fire at the cave entrance does two things simultaneously. It gives light and warmth, obviously. But more importantly, it sends a clear message into the darkness. Something is here. Something with fire. And that message, in the animal kingdom of 50,000 years ago, carries tremendous weight. Most predators will avoid fire. Not out of some mystical fear of it, but because they have learned, through their own painful experience or the experience of their kind, that fire means humans, and humans mean danger, and danger is something a smart predator avoids when there are easier meals available. The fire is not perfect protection. Nothing out here is perfect, but it is real protection. It is the first and most important tool in the nighttime safety kit. The second tool is sound. All around the cave entrance, small stones have been placed, not as decoration, not as boundary markers exactly, but as alarms. Any animal approaching in the dark will eventually disturb one, send it skittering against another, and the sound, small as it is, will carry in the quiet night. The watching woman will hear it. She will be ready. The third tool, of course, is each other. There are 15 people in and around this cave tonight. That means 15 sets of ears, 15 sets of reflexes, 15 people who will wake and respond if the situation demands it. The group is not just a social unit. It is a survival mechanism. Alone on this plane, a single human is vulnerable in ways that are frightening to contemplate. But 15 humans, coordinated, armed, and awake in rotation, that is a very different proposition. The cave lion knows this. The pack of spotted hyenas working the northern valley tonight knows this, and so they will look for easier targets, at least until hunger or desperation tips the calculation the other way. Inside the cave, the fire has grown confident now. It is no longer the tentative flame of 20 minutes ago. It is a real fire, throwing real heat, painting the cave walls in the flickering amber and shadow that is the universal wallpaper of prehistoric human habitation. The smoke rises and finds its way out through a natural crack in the overhang above. Someone figured this out long ago, positioned the fire precisely here for exactly this reason, and the knowledge passed down like the positioning of the sleeping spaces, like the placement of the branch screen, like everything useful that humans know by inheritance and imitation, and the slow accumulation of lived experience. The children are already beginning to slow down. One small boy, maybe 4 years old, has draped himself across the lap of the older woman, the one who moves more slowly, the one everyone seems to orbit, and is watching the fire with the heavy-lidded attention of someone fighting sleep and losing. His eyes close, open, close again. The woman puts her hand on his back, not patting, not rocking, just resting there. The warmth of her palm through the hide wrapped around him. The steadiness of her breathing. He doesn't fight anymore. He goes. There is something about watching a child fall asleep in this place that reaches across every millennia between then and now. The specific objects are different. The hide instead of a blanket, the fire instead of a nightlight, the limestone overhang instead of a plastered ceiling, but the thing itself is identical. The weight of a small body against a larger one, the gradual loosening of small muscles, the way the breathing slows and deepens and becomes finally something you could set a clock to, sleep reaching up and taking what it needs. The older woman looks at the fire. She has seen, let's say, 50 winters. In this world, that is a remarkable age. She has buried children and parents and friends. She has survived famine and injury and sickness, and at least one encounter with something large and fast that left a scar on her left forearm that she no longer thinks about. And tonight she is sitting by a fire in a cave with 15 people who are alive and warm and fed, and by the standards of this world, that is a good night. That is a very good night. She does not think about the past in the way we mean when we talk about thinking. She does not reconstruct it narratively or analyse it for lessons. But she carries it, the way everyone here carries everything, in her body, in her reflexes, in the things she does without deciding to do them, the way she checks the fire without being asked, the way her head turns toward the entrance when the night wind shifts, the way she holds the sleeping child without holding him too tight. Outside, the first stars have been joined by thousands of others. The Milky Way is fully visible now, a broad river of pale light running from the southern horizon nearly to the northern one, and it is so bright that the ground outside the cave has a faint luminosity to it, a ghostly pale shimmer on the frost-tipped grass. No one inside notices this particular beauty right now. They are focused on the smaller, more immediate light of the fire, but it is there, above them, waiting. The whole universe, doing what it has always done, completely indifferent to whether anyone is watching. The night is an hour old. The safety arrangements are as good as they can be made. The fire is burning well. The watch is set. Now the darkness sends its first sounds. If you have spent any time in a truly wild place at night, a forest far from town, a mountain camp above the tree line, a desert with no roads within 50 miles, you know that silence is not actually what you find there. What you find is a different kind of sound, a sound that has nothing to do with human activity, and once your ears adjust to it, once the part of your brain that is always listening for engines and alerts and human voices relaxes its grip, what you hear is extraordinary. The Pleistocene night is not quiet, not even close. Begin with the wind. On the open plain there is almost always wind, not the gusty, unpredictable wind of a storm, but the steady directional wind that comes off the highland to the northwest and moves across the grass in long, slow waves. You can hear it coming before it arrives. It moves through the tall grass with a sound like rushing water, a broad sibilant rush that builds and builds and then passes over you like a wave breaking, and then fades behind you and then comes again. If you close your eyes and listen to only this, the wind through the grass, you could almost imagine you're near the ocean. The rhythms are that similar, the deep, unhurried pulse of something enormous and indifferent moving through space. At the cave entrance, the watching woman hears this wind and passes it unconsciously, the way a musician hears a chord and knows its component notes without thinking about it. She's listening through the wind, not to it. She's listening for the sounds that the wind might carry or mask. The sound of a twig breaking under a heavy paw, the low rumble of something approaching from the darker part of the plain, the barely audible whimper of an animal that has caught a scent and is deciding what to do about it. But the wind is clean tonight, nothing in it that doesn't belong. From the forest edge, maybe 200 yards to the east, there is a regular tapping. A woodpecker working a dead tree even at this hour, driven by something. Hunger, habit, the particular way certain insects move under bark at night. The sound carries clearly in the cold air. Tock, 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 pause, tock, tock, tock. A pattern so regular it almost sounds mechanical. Then silence. Then it starts again from a slightly different location, as if the bird has moved a few feet and found a new promising spot. There are owls. Of course there are owls. One of them has been calling from the darkness to the north since about 10 minutes after the sunset. It is a sound with no good modern analogue. Not the soft hooting of a barn owl, but something larger, deeper, with a resonance that seems to come from inside the chest rather than outside the ears. This is an eagle owl, one of the largest owls in the world, perched somewhere in the rocks above the cave and systematically advertising its presence to the other eagle owls within earshot. The sound it makes is part call, part warning, part territorial claim. It means, I am here. This is mine. Do not come closer. The people in the cave have heard this owl every night they have camped here. They know its voice as well as they know each other's. Some nights it is reassuring. The owl means the area directly above them is under surveillance, which means nothing is moving there that hasn't been assessed. Some nights it falls silent for hours, and that silence can be informative in a different way. Tonight, the owl calls and calls and calls, and the night remains large and ordinary. Now come the sounds from farther away, the sounds that require stillness to hear, that only reach you in the gaps between the wind and the fires crackling. Somewhere to the north, miles away, there is the sound of ice, not cracking, more like a deep, low moan, a sound so low it is almost below the threshold of hearing, felt in the chest rather than perceived by the ears. This is a glacier, moving, or more precisely settling. The ice sheet to the north is not static. It is an enormous living system constantly shifting under its own impossible weight, and the sounds it makes as it does this are old and strange and unlike anything in a modern person's experience. People who have camped near living glaciers describe the sounds as somewhere between a bass drum and a conversation in a language you almost understand. Dull, periodic, carrying a long way in cold air. The people in the cave do not find this sound alarming. It is the background of their lives, the low note under everything. It is as constant and untroubling as the sound of your refrigerator is to you. Present, unremarkable, part of the acoustic furniture of existence. What they do pay attention to is the sound that comes next. From the south, from the direction of the river 2 miles away, there is a rumbling. Low at first, then building. Then the unmistakable crack of something enormous crossing ice-covered shallows, the deep splashing that follows, and then the rumbling again from the opposite bank. A mammoth has just crossed the river, probably the same bull that was visible against the skyline at sunset, completing his route to wherever he spends his nights. The sound of his passage carries for miles in the still air, not quite music, but not quite noise either. Something in between, something with a rhythm to it, a footfall rhythm. 4 massive feet finding purchase in a frozen riverbed. The watching woman at the cave entrance has lifted her head at this sound. She has identified it. Mammoth, river, moving south to north, no change in trajectory that would bring it anywhere near the cave, and she has relaxed again. All of this takes perhaps 4 seconds. Her face does not change expression during any of it. This is what Pleistocene awareness actually looks like. Not the wide-eyed, panicked vigilance of someone startled by every sound, but the quiet, continuous, low-level processing of an expert. She's running a permanent background program. What does this mean? What does that mean? Where is it? How far? What direction? What speed does it matter? And most of the time the answer is, it doesn't matter. Not to us. Not tonight. Keep watching. Inside the cave, the fire pops loudly as a knot of sap in one of the logs explodes in the heat. Two of the sleeping adults shift and resettle without waking. A child whimpers briefly and is soothed by a hand on their back before they even fully surface from sleep. The fire recovers from its outburst and returns to its steady, patient crackle. Fire has its own sound grammar if you listen long enough. There is the high, bright crackle of the surface flames, rapid and variable, changing constantly as the fire finds new fuel. Beneath that is a lower sound, more continuous, the sound of serious burning, wood releasing its stored energy in waves of heat that you can feel on your face from 5 feet away. And beneath even that, if the night is still enough, there is the sound of the coals, a barely audible hiss and tick as they glow and shift, the sound of something that was a tree, that was alive, slowly becoming something else. The smoke drifts up and finds the crack in the cave ceiling. It carries the smell of pine, mostly, with something underneath that is darker and harder to name. Bone, hide, the accumulated smell of many nights of fire in this particular space. Whatever it is the smell of home, of safety, of warmth in the dark. And the people sleeping in the cave are breathing it without noticing it. The way you stop smelling your own house the moment you've lived in it long enough. The night insects are perhaps the biggest surprise if you're imagining prehistoric Europe as purely cold and spare. Even in late autumn, even at temperatures approaching freezing, there are insects. Not the summer abundance of warm nights, not the thick layered chorus of frogs and crickets and cicadas that you get in July, but a spare, clear set of sounds from the hardier species. A few crickets, slower than their summer counterparts, their rhythm reduced to something almost stately. A moth navigating by firelight, its wings making almost no sound at all but producing a shadow on the cave wall. A brief moving darkness that one of the sleeping children would probably dream about if they noticed it. From the grass beyond the stone barrier, something small and fast moves quickly through the dry stems. A vole, probably, or a mouse. Some small mammal going about the business of small mammals, which is to say searching for seeds and trying not to get eaten. The owl above has undoubtedly heard this. Within the minute you hear the precise, silent, devastating sound of wings. Then nothing. Then the owl begins calling again from a slightly different position. This is the night economy. Everything eating something. Everything avoiding being eaten. A system of tremendous complexity running perfectly without any management, without any intention, without anything that could be called planning. The owl takes the mouse had taken seeds, the seeds had taken sunlight. The sunlight had crossed 93 million miles of space to spend itself on this particular patch of frozen grass so that this particular mouse could carry those seeds to this particular moment and end here. It is brutal and it is beautiful, and if you watch it long enough, it starts to seem less like violence and more like conversation. The watching woman has seen this exchange and noted it. Not poetically, practically. The owl caught something near the grass margin, which means the grass margin is active tonight, which means there are small animals moving, which means the larger predators that feed on small animals, the foxes, the weasels, the smaller cats, are probably active too, which means the perimeter is worth watching. She files this away. She keeps watching. The wind comes again from the northwest. This time it carries something she hasn't smelled all evening. Something sharp and musk-heavy and very specific. She goes still. Her hand finds the shaft of the short spear that leans against the rock wall beside her. She does not grip it. Not yet. She just knows where it is. The smell passes. The wind shifts. Nothing moves on the plane that shouldn't be moving. She breathes again. The fire continues its quiet conversation with the dark. By now, the sky overhead is fully committed to the business of being a night sky, which in the Pleistocene means something that most modern humans never get to see. The stars are not a decoration here. They are a presence. On a night this clear, this far from any artificial light, the sky has a quality that is almost three-dimensional. Not a flat ceiling of light points, but a deep, layered field of them, near and far, bright and barely visible. The closest constellations hanging with what feels like palpable weight above the cave entrance, and the more distant nebulae ghostly and enormous behind them. The people who live on this plane have organized these stars not into the constellations of ancient Greece, those are still tens of thousands of years away, but into their own patterns, their own stories, their own navigational landmarks. They know which star rises first in the east, which cluster of bright points marks the direction of the winter hunting grounds, which faint smear of light near the horizon means the season is about to change. The sky is their calendar, their compass, their clock. It is the most sophisticated piece of technology they have, and it requires no manufacturing, no maintenance, and no batteries. Tonight they are not looking at it. They are warm, most of them, and full, and the drift towards sleep is stronger than the pull of even the most beautiful sky. But it is there, and if you lie here in the place where they are lying, with the fire at your feet and the cold held back by stone and hide, and bodies close together, and if you let your eyes travel upward toward the smoke-hazed opening of the cave ceiling, you can catch just the edge of it, a handful of stars visible in the gap, sharp and cold and possibly far away. They have been there for 5 billion years. They will be there long after every human being who has ever lived has been forgotten. And right now, in this moment, they are shining down on 15 people in a cave who are slowly and collectively falling asleep. The first sounds of darkness have done their work. The plane is not silent, it will never be silent, but it has settled into its nighttime key, its lower register, its slower rhythms. And under the murmur of wind and fire and owl and distant mammoth, something is building. The night is not safe yet. It will not be safe for hours yet. But right now, in this particular cave, by this particular fire, it is as safe as it gets on the Pleistocene plain. And that, it turns out, is enough. Let me tell you about something that modern humans have almost completely lost. It is not a skill exactly, and it is not a sense. It is more like a frequency. A channel that is always available, but that most of us have permanently muted by living in environments that make it unnecessary. The ability to sit in darkness and listen with your whole body. Not just your ears, though the ears are doing a lot of the work, but your skin too is an instrument. The tiny hairs on your forearms rise when there is a change in the air pressure around you, which happens when something large moves nearby. Your peripheral vision, which in total darkness is actually more sensitive than your central vision, catches movement at the edges of what you can see. Your gut. And this is not a metaphor. There are literally more nerve endings in the human digestive system than in the human spine. Your gut sends information about threat, about the quality of the air, about chemical signals too faint for your nose to consciously process, but not too faint to register. The watching woman at the cave entrance is running on all of these channels simultaneously. She is not thinking about it. She is just doing what she does, which is to be present in the dark in a way that most of us have no reference point for. What she is listening for, primarily, on a night like this, in a place like this, are two things: the cave lion and the spotted hyena. Panthera leospelaea, the cave lion, is one of the most formidable predators this planet has ever produced. Larger than the modern African lion by perhaps 15 to 20%, longer in the body, with legs built for the open pursuit of prey across flat terrain. It does not roar the way you might imagine a lion roaring, not that full-throated operatic sound from the nature documentary. The cave lion communicates in a range of vocalizations that runs from a deep, almost subsonic rumble to a coughing grunt to a sound that witnesses who have heard modern lions describe as somewhere between a saw and a drum. It is a sound that does something specific to the human nervous system, something very old. It has been selecting for that response for 2 million years. The humans who didn't feel fear when they heard a lion nearby didn't survive long enough to have many children. The ones who felt it immediately and completely, who woke from sleep at the first distant hint of it, those are your ancestors, which means that somewhere in you, right now, in whatever warm room you're lying in, is a piece of very old wiring that is specifically calibrated to respond to a large cat in darkness. The cave lion is out there tonight. Not close, the watching woman would know if it were close, but within a radius that matters. Perhaps a mile to the northeast, where the forest thins out and the open ground begins, there is evidence of recent activity. Tracks that were found yesterday morning, pressed deep into the soft earth near the stream. 4 paws, enormous, the depth suggesting a large male, the stride length suggesting he was moving at a relaxed walk, not hunting, but patrolling, checking his territory, making sure everything in it was where it was supposed to be. He's doing that now, somewhere out there in the dark, moving along paths that have been his paths for years, reading the landscape through his nose with a fluency that is nearly incomprehensible to a creature that relies as much on vision as humans do. He knows the cave is here. He has known it for years. He knows that the small, bright point of light at its entrance means humans, and humans mean a certain kind of danger that he prefers to avoid unless he's very hungry and very desperate. Tonight he is neither. There is a reindeer carcass cooling in the forest from last night's kill, and he will go back to it before morning. He passes within half a mile of the cave, invisible in the darkness, silent in the grass, and then moves on. The watching woman smells him, or smells something, the sharp musk of large cat, and holds very still for a very long moment, and then the smell fades, and she breathes again, and the fire at her back continues its patient work. The spotted hyenas are different. They are in many ways more frightening than the lions. Not because they are larger or faster, they are neither, but because of how they operate. A lion hunts alone or in small groups. A hyena clan can number 40 or 50 animals, and they work in a coordinated way that, when you watch it happen, is uncomfortable in its familiarity. They surround, they pressure, they take turns exhausting prey, wearing it down over time rather than relying on a single decisive strike. They are loud about it. The sounds of a hyena hunt are not subtle. A hyena clan is moving tonight about 2 miles to the south, following the river. They have found something. The watching woman can hear them, faintly in the intervals between wind gusts, their distinctive calls, the whoop that carries for miles, the giggling cackle that sounds disturbingly like human laughter at a distance, the low, grunting communication between individuals that is barely audible but present, underlying everything else. They have something. A carcass, probably, or they have cornered something along the riverbank. The sounds build for a while, intense and competitive. There is always competition within a clan at a kill, even as they cooperate to make the kill happen. And then they begin to fade as the clan moves on. The watching woman tracks this by ear. She knows hyenas will rarely approach an active fire, but she also knows that 40 hyenas is a different proposition from 5 hyenas, and that hunger changes the risk calculation in every animal she knows of, including humans. So she watches. And the sounds keep fading, moving south, following the river, until the wind carries them away entirely. Inside the cave, no one has woken for the hyenas. They're far enough away that the sounds don't penetrate the fire's crackle and the people's breathing. But even in sleep, the adults are not entirely switched off. They are doing what researchers now call sentinel sleep, a kind of partially aware rest that allows them to drift deeply while still maintaining some connection to the acoustic environment around them. If the watching woman were to call out, if there were a sudden change in the fire's behaviour, if something large were to approach the cave entrance, they would surface from sleep quickly, cleanly, without the groggy disorientation that modern humans often experience when woken suddenly. This is the evolutionary gift of sleeping in dangerous places. Your ancestors were not people who slept deeply and woke slowly. They couldn't afford to be. The ones who slept with one ear open, who came awake ready, who could move from horizontal to standing in under a second, those are the ones who are still here. It is one of the reasons that many modern humans struggle with sleep. Their nervous systems were calibrated for a much more dangerous world, and the safety of a modern bedroom, genuinely, profoundly safe in ways that would be literally unimaginable to a Pleistocene human, confuses the system. There's no threat to monitor, but the monitoring circuitry is still running, still listening, still waiting for the lion that isn't coming. Perhaps that's part of why you're here, listening to this. Because somewhere in you, the ancient listening is still active, and the sound of wind and fire and a world that is structured the way the world was structured for most of human existence is, at some level below thought, deeply familiar, like a song you've never heard but somehow know all the words to. There is a moment, sometime in the second hour of darkness, when the plain goes very still, not silent. There is always the wind, always the fire, always the owl, but still in a different way, like the held breath between one phrase and the next. The watching woman feels it before she can name what it is. Then she knows. The wolf pack is moving through. They come from the north, following a route that their kind has travelled for thousands of years along the base of the ridge where the rock changes and the ground is firmer. 7 of them. She can't see them, but she knows from the sound, from the pattern of disturbances in the small animal sounds ahead of them, how many there are. 7 wolves moving in their characteristic loose formation, heads low, bodies relaxed but aware, eating miles at a pace that would exhaust a running human within a few minutes. They are not interested in the cave. They have smelled the fire long ago, smelled the humans, and made their calculation. Tonight, they are after something else. The reindeer band that moved through the valley this afternoon. The wolves know the reindeer's route better than the reindeer know it themselves. They know where the herd tends to slow down, where the footing gets uncertain near the frozen creek, where a sick or injured animal will fall behind. They are going there now, patiently, unhurriedly, with the total certainty of animals who have been doing exactly this for longer than human language has existed. The wolves pass. The plain's ambient sounds fill back in behind them. The voles and mice resuming their work in the grass. The crickets restarting their slow rhythm. The owl completing the sentence it had paused. And the watching woman uncurls her hand from the spear shaft. She had gripped it without meaning to, without even noticing. The wolves put something in her that fire can only partially suppress. Not fear exactly, but recognition. They are like her, in a way she can't articulate, coordinated, loyal within their group, ferocious when they need to be. She watches until the sounds of them have completely faded. Then she turns back to the fire. She feeds it 2 more sticks. She pulls her hide a little tighter around her shoulders. The night continues. Hours pass in this way. The plain moves through its nighttime shifts, predators and prey adjusting their distances and directions in the constant slow dance of a functioning ecosystem. The cold deepens, degree by degree, until the frost on the grass beyond the cave entrance is thick enough to crunch under a footstep. The stars turn overhead with their patient, enormous indifference. Inside the cave, the fire burns steadily. The sleeping people breathe in their slow, collective rhythm, and the smoke rises, and the coals pulse. One of the men near the back of the cave has turned over in his sleep and is now lying with his arm across the woman beside him, not conscious, not choosing, just finding warmth. Their breathing synchronizes without effort, without awareness, the way breathing synchronizes when people sleep near each other long enough. In, out, in, out. A single rhythm for two people. The boy who fell asleep on the older woman's lap has been moved at some point onto his own sleeping space nearby. He is curled on his side in the unconscious fetal position that every mammal seems to return to when it is cold and safe and deeply asleep. His face, even at this hour, still has that particular nighttime openness that children's faces get when they are genuinely all the way down. Smooth, still. A face that is not performing anything for anyone, just resting. Outside, a shooting star crosses the sky from west to east. It is bright enough that its light briefly changes the character of the darkness beyond the cave entrance. A second of silver blue where before there was only black and the firelight's orange. The watching woman sees it. She's seen shooting stars her whole life, and they no longer surprise her. But they still stop her, just for a moment. She watches the sky where it appeared, as if another one might follow in the same track. Sometimes they do. It doesn't. The sky's just the sky again. Enormous. Cold. Brilliant with static light. She puts another stick on the fire and settles back into her watching. The predators are out there. They are always out there. But the fire is burning. The barrier is holding. The people behind her are breathing. And the night so far is just a night. That is all you can ask, that the night be just a night. If you're finding this restful, if some part of you is already beginning to let go of the day, I'd love it if you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to make sure you find your way back here on the nights when you need it most. And it genuinely helps this kind of content reach more people who might be lying awake right now just like you. Now, let's go deeper into the night. By the time the night reaches what we would call midnight, the cave has fully transformed into something different from what it was at sunset. It is no longer a shelter being prepared. It is a shelter being inhabited. And there is a difference between those two things that is difficult to put into words but very easy to feel. The stone walls have absorbed the heat from the fire and are giving it back now in a slow, even radiation that supplements the fire's direct warmth. The hides on the floor, layered 2 and 3 deep in places, have been warmed by the bodies on them for 3 hours, and now hold that warmth in their fibres, so that even if the fire were to drop low, the immediate sleeping area would stay survivable for a considerable time. The cave has been doing this work, the passive work of thermal mass, of insulation, of accumulated warmth. Every night it has been occupied for potentially thousands of years. It is not a home in the permanent sense, but it is a recurring home, a seasonal home, a place that knows these people and that they know in return. There are specific things they know about this cave. They know that water seeps through a crack near the north wall in spring, making that corner damp and cold. They know that the smoke from the fire settles heavily when the wind comes from the south, and on those nights you have to keep the fire smaller. They know that there is a loose slab of rock in the floor near the entrance that sounds hollow when you walk on it. They know all of this the way you know your own house. Not from a map or a manual, but from the accumulated daily experience of being in it. From the specific knowledge that belongs only to people who have been somewhere enough times to stop being visitors. Not everyone in the cave is asleep at midnight. The sleeping and waking cycle out here is not the consolidated 8-hour block that modern life pushes toward. It is, as I mentioned earlier, something more segmented, more honest maybe, about the way the body actually wants to handle a long dark night. Researchers who study traditional societies that have minimal artificial light have found something striking. People naturally wake in the middle of the night. Not from disturbance, not from noise, just from a physiological shift that occurs in the gap between one sleep cycle and the next. They wake. They're awake for an hour or two, and then they sleep again until morning. Historical records from medieval Europe, before artificial lighting became widespread, describe this pattern as absolutely standard. People referred to their first sleep and their second sleep as naturally as we refer to breakfast and dinner. In the cave right now, 4 of the 15 people are in that waking interval. 2 of them are the men who took over the watch from the young woman a while ago. She's sleeping now, her head on her folded arms, her breathing slow and complete, in the way that people sleep who have been awake and cold for 3 hours and have finally let themselves go. The other 2 wakeful people are not watching. They are simply awake, lying near the fire, looking at the ceiling of the cave where the smoke moves in slow currents, and the firelight does its ancient work on the stone. One of them is talking quietly to the other. Not a story, not yet, just a murmur of something. A few words, a pause, a response. The kind of conversation that exists between people who have been close for years and no longer need much language to communicate. A conversation that is mostly silence with occasional punctuation. This is, if you think about it, one of the most human things you can imagine. 2 people lying near a fire in the middle of the night, saying very little to each other, not needing to. Whatever the specific words are, we can't know. The language is gone, every trace of it absorbed into the languages that came after, and the languages after those. The texture of the exchange is perfectly clear across 50,000 years. I'm here. You're here. We're all right. The work that gets done at midnight is quiet work. Practical work that benefits from the stillness of the late hour and the reduction in demand from everyone who is sleeping. Near the fire, one of the women who's awake has a piece of hide across her lap and is working at it with a small, sharp bone tool. She is thinning the hide, scraping at it with a motion that is automatic, deeply practiced, the kind of motion that requires almost no conscious attention once you've done it enough times. What she is making, or continuing to make, it looks like this project has been underway for several days, is a piece of clothing. Not a full garment, not yet. Just a section that will eventually become part of a boot or a leg covering or a wrap for a child. The work is finer than it looks. The hide, once it is thin enough, will be soft and flexible in a way that rawhide never is. It will conform to a body the way cloth does, keeping warmth in, keeping cold out, moving without restricting movement. This technology, the technology of processed hide, is one of the things that allowed humans to survive the Ice Age at all. Not fire alone, not stone tools alone, but the ability to wrap themselves in the insulation that the cold-adapted animals of the Pleistocene had evolved over millions of years. They couldn't grow their own fur, but they could take the fur of the animals they hunted and make it serve the same purpose, with modifications, with refinements, with the accumulated ingenuity of many generations working on the same problem. The woman working the hide is not thinking about any of this as a technology or an achievement. She is just doing what she does, the way you might fold laundry while half watching something in the background. Her hands know this job without her mind needing to supervise it. And so part of her attention is on the hide, and part of it is on the fire, and part of it, the part that never quite switches off, is on the entrance to the cave and the sounds beyond it. She is humming, very quietly, barely above the threshold of hearing, more felt in the chest than heard by the ears. Not a melody in the way we'd recognize a melody, but a set of tones that repeat in a pattern, rising and falling in a way that is neither random nor exactly structured. It is the sound of someone keeping themselves company in the dark, the sound of a mind that is occupied, but not busy. Content in the particular way that people are content when their hands are doing something useful, and there is no immediate crisis requiring their attention. The man lying beside the fire is listening to her hum. He is not sleeping. He is not watching. He is in that suspended state that comes in the middle of the night, when the mind has released the day but not yet found its way back to sleep. A state that is not quite anything, but which has its own quality, a looseness, a willingness to lie still and let the fire and the sound and the dark be enough. He is thinking, or something that might as well be called thinking, about the hunting they have been planning. There is a group of reindeer that has been using a particular crossing point on the river, and the men have been watching this pattern for several days and believe they can place themselves correctly to intercept the herd at the crossing. This thought is not a verbal thought. It doesn't come in language so much as in images and spatial relationships, the way a chess player thinks several moves ahead without narrating each step. He is placing bodies in the landscape. He is running the scenario. Where should they be when the herd arrives? What is the wind direction at that crossing in the early morning? Who should be upstream? Who downstream? What sound, what signal will tell them all to move at once? He is doing this the same way you might plan a meeting or a route or a piece of work at 3 a.m. when you can't sleep. Your mind going over it, smoothing it, looking for the things that could go wrong. Except that for him, the stakes are different. Getting this right means meat for the group for several days. Getting it wrong could mean injury. An injury out here can kill you as surely as a lion. He turns it over a few more times. Then his mind releases it. There's nothing more to plan tonight. Either the reindeer will be at the crossing at dawn or they won't. Either the weather will hold or it won't. He has done what he can with the information he has. He closes his eyes. The fire is warm on his face. The children are in the deepest part of their sleep by now. The boy who fought sleep so hard at sunset is as far down as it's possible to go. His breathing almost imperceptible, his body entirely still except for the slow rise and fall of his chest. In the morning he will wake abruptly, the way children do, going from complete unconsciousness to complete alertness in the space of a few seconds. But right now he is somewhere far from this cave, somewhere that sleep takes you, wherever that is. There is a girl of perhaps 7 years sleeping near the boy, curled in the opposite direction. She has taken, in the middle of the night, the extreme position of a child who is deeply and securely asleep, arms thrown wide, one leg kicked out from under her hide, a complete and oblivious trust in the warmth and safety of the space around her. It is a posture that says, in the most physical language possible, nothing is going to happen to me. I know this. In my body I know this, and so I will let go completely. She's right to know this. The cave has held tonight. The fire has held. The watching has held. And she is sleeping the way children sleep who have been given the thing that children most need, which is not comfort in the material sense. She has no mattress, no pillow, no stuffed animal, but safety. The felt sense of being held by the people around her, of being inside the perimeter of care. That is what sleep requires, not a perfect surface or a perfect temperature. The knowledge, bone deep, that someone is watching, that you can let go. There is a lesson in this that we have perhaps overcomplicated. The elaborate sleep technologies of modern life, the weighted blankets and the white noise machines and the temperature-controlled mattresses and the blue light blocking glasses, they are all in their way attempts to recreate this one thing, the felt sense of safety, the experience of being inside a perimeter, being held, being watched over. And if none of them quite work, or if they work only part way, it might be because they are addressing the surface of the problem while the deeper thing, the social thing, the mammalian thing, The thing about proximity and presence and the sound of another person breathing nearby remains unaddressed. You cannot replace that particular sensation with any technology. You can only approximate it. Or you can lie still in the dark and let your nervous system be soothed by the sounds of what the world was like when the perimeter was literal, when the watch was human, when the fire was the thing standing between you and the cold night. Which is, in a sense, exactly what you're doing right now. Midnight in the cave has its own specific character. It is different from the earlier part of the night, when there was still activity, still the sound of people settling in, still the particular alertness that the first hours of darkness bring. And it is different from the later part of the night, which we will come to in time, when the darkness has reached its fullest depth, and even the watching becomes a kind of dream. Right now, the cave is at its most itself. The fire is mature, not the young, eager fire of early evening, but a fire that has been burning long enough to have developed a character. It is lower now, the flames not as high, but steadier, more even in its heat, like someone who has moved past the initial excitement of an evening and settled into the real warmth of the company. The coals beneath the flames are enormous, a deep red-orange bed of stored heat that could cook anything you placed on it. They will still be alive at dawn, or close to it. The experienced fire tender knows how to build a fire that holds. The two men on watch sit on either side of the entrance, close enough to the warmth to survive the cold, but exposed enough to hear what the night is doing. They don't talk much. This is the deep watch, the serious watch, the hours when most predators are at their most active. Every sound needs to be processed. Every shift in the wind needs to be noted. They have developed their own private language for this work, a slight movement of the head, a tilted chin, a look that allows them to communicate without making sound. Did you hear that? Yes. What is it? Not sure. Stay ready, already ready. An hour passes, then another. The fire drops lower. One of the men feeds it carefully without urgency. 2 pieces of wood, placed precisely to maintain the burn without creating a sudden flare of light that would ruin the night vision they've built up for hours of sitting in the dark. The other man watches the entrance while this happens. They have done this enough times that the handoff is seamless. One action covers for the other, a system as automatic as breathing. Outside, something calls from the far ridge. Not a sound that either of them recognizes immediately, which makes them both very still for a long moment. Then one of them makes a small, low sound, barely a word, something like an exhalation with a consonant in it, and the other nods. They've placed it. A large owl, a different species from the one that was calling earlier, one that lives in the rocky parts of the ridge rather than the open forest. Not a threat, not relevant. They relax back into their watch. This is the texture of the deep night, long stretches of nothing, punctuated by brief, sharp moments of attention and assessment, and then the long stretch again. The fire, the cold stone at their backs, the stars turning overhead, the breathing of the people behind them. It is not, despite everything, an unhappy way to spend a night. There is something in keeping watch, in being the one who is awake while others sleep, the one whose alertness allows others peace, that has its own quiet satisfaction, a sense of purpose that is as old as any human institution, older than cities, older than governments, older than writing, as old as groups of people sleeping together in the dark, which is to say as old as people. Inside the cave, the woman working the hide has put it away. Her hands have done enough for tonight, and she knows from long experience that the kind of work she was doing, precise, repetitive scraping that requires consistent pressure and exact angles, is worse when you're tired. You can ruin the hide if you push too hard, take it too thin in the wrong places. She's done that before, and the waste of it still sits with her. She puts the tool and the hide in the carry bag near the wall and lies down. She does not go to sleep immediately. She lies on her back, which is unusual. Most people here sleep on their sides, curled toward warmth, and she watches the smoke moving in the gap at the top of the cave. The smoke is doing something interesting tonight. It is moving in two directions at once, the upper layers going one way and the lower layers another, drawn by different pressure gradients through the gap in the ceiling. She watches this for a while. It is neither beautiful nor useful. It is just interesting. And sometimes interesting is enough. Her mind wanders in the way that minds wander just before sleep, not following any one thought to its conclusion, but touching things lightly and moving on. The hide she has been working on. The way the man on watch tilted his head a few minutes ago when the ridge owl called. How she recognized the gesture even from across the cave, in the dark, at the edge of her vision. The taste of the smoked meat they ate at sunset. How it was better than the last batch. How the woman who made it had done something different with the smoke that she means to ask about. Small things. The small things that make up a life. The small things that are, if you're honest about it, most of what a life is made of. She is asleep before she finishes the thought about the smoked meat. She doesn't know this. She is just gone. The cave breathes around her. 15 people and their warmth and their dreaming and their small sounds in the dark, and the fire eating through the night, and outside the stars completing their rotation, and the predators doing whatever predators do at the deepest hour of a Pleistocene night, and in the middle of all of it, this small collection of human beings, warm enough, fed enough, safe enough, surviving, which was never, when it came to it, the grim business we imagined it was. It was this: warmth and company and the fire holding through the night. One more day coming in the morning, one more chance to do everything that needed doing. But first, the rest of the dark. The second half of the night, when the cold reaches its deepest point, and the stars begin their slow movement toward the horizon, and the fire needs tending most carefully, and the watch becomes, in its own way, a kind of prayer. We're not there yet, but we're getting closer. Stay warm, stay with us. The night is doing what it always does, and it is doing it beautifully. There is a kind of cold that modern people almost never experience. Not the cold of a winter morning when you step outside to get the newspaper, or the cold of a ski slope, or even the cold of a power outage in January. Those are inconveniences. What I'm talking about is a different order of cold altogether. The kind that exists without any backstop. No furnace waiting behind a door, no car with heated seats idling in a driveway, no hot coffee 20 minutes away. Just the cold itself, in its full and original form, pressing against everything that is warm and alive and trying its best to equalize the temperature of the world. On the Pleistocene plain, in the late autumn of 50,000 years ago, at 2 o'clock in the morning, the temperature outside the cave is somewhere around 28 degrees Fahrenheit. That is 4 degrees below freezing. There is no wind chill calculation to apply tonight because the wind has mercifully died down in the last hour, settling into a near stillness that makes the cold feel clean rather than aggressive. But 28 degrees is 28 degrees, and the frost on the grass beyond the cave entrance is now thick enough to be visible even in firelight, a pale, crystalline coating on every blade and stem, catching the orange glow and sending it back in tiny cold sparks. Inside the cave, the temperature is perhaps 45 degrees. That gap, 17 degrees between outside and inside, represents the sum total of everything the people in this cave have done right tonight. The fire, the stone barrier at the entrance, the branch screen, the body heat of 15 people sleeping in proximity, the hides on the floor and wrapped around sleeping bodies, the limestone walls that have absorbed the day's warmth and are releasing it now slowly, the way a stone holds the sun long after the sun has gone. 17 degrees is not nothing. 17 degrees is, in the mathematics of survival on a night this cold, the difference between waking up and not waking up. The people sleeping in this cave understand cold the way you understand a language you grew up speaking, not by thinking about it, but in your body, in your automatic responses, in the things you do without deciding to do them. A sleeping person whose body temperature begins to drop will curl tighter without waking, will pull a hide closer to the chin without conscious intention, will shift toward another warm body, seeking contact, seeking the basic mammalian solution to cold that is older than any tool, older than fire itself, the solution of proximity. Of being warm because something else is warm and you're touching it. Watch for a moment how the sleeping arrangements in this cave deal with the cold without anyone currently awake having to manage them. The youngest children are in the warmest position, fully surrounded, tucked against adults on at least two sides, their small bodies generating surprising heat per pound of body weight, and also losing it faster than an adult's would. They are, in the thermodynamic language of survival, both a resource and a liability. They contribute warmth to the center of the group, and they also need protection from the edges of it. The arrangement that has evolved, over who knows how many generations of sleeping in caves in winter, naturally addresses both things. The children go in the middle, the adults face outward. It is not a policy. It is not a decision. It is a pattern, like the pattern of flocking birds or schooling fish, that emerges from the individual behavior of each member of the group responding to their own immediate situation. The parent who curls around their child is responding to the child's warmth and the child's need simultaneously. The result at the group level is a structure that maximizes the survival of the most vulnerable members. Human groups have been doing this for so long that it has probably shaped our neurological responses to cold. Studies of people sleeping in groups in cold environments show that social contact raises body temperature measurably, not just through the obvious mechanism of shared heat, but through a genuine physiological response to proximity and touch. The body recognizes that it is not alone, and it adjusts its heat conservation accordingly. It is more efficient when it is not afraid. The fire is the other half of this equation, and at this hour it requires careful management. The man on watch nearer. The entrance has been monitoring the fire the way an experienced sailor monitors the sea. Not constantly staring at it, but always peripherally aware of it, catching the subtle changes in its sound and light and behavior that tell you what it's about to do. He knows the difference between a fire that is burning steadily and one that is starting to cool. He knows the difference between coals that will hold for 2 hours and coals that will need feeding in 20 minutes. He has been building and tending fires in this specific cave for years, and he has learned its particular character the way you learn the quirks of your own kitchen stove. Right now, the fire needs 1 more piece of wood, not 2. 1. A piece that is dense enough to burn slowly, to sit on the existing coals and feed them gradually rather than consuming itself in a rush of flame. He has been saving this piece, a thick section of oak that he found near the forest edge 3 days ago, already partially seasoned by the cold and dry air. Oak burns slower than pine, produces more heat per volume, makes better coals. In a world without central heating, this knowledge is not trivial. It is the kind of knowledge that keeps people alive. He places the oak piece carefully on the fire, positioning it so the existing coals contact its densest part, angling it slightly so the airflow he's worked out over years of tending this fire will feed it optimally. Then he sits back and watches for a minute while the fire adjusts to the new fuel, settling into its modified rhythm, the coals brightening slightly as new surfaces catch. Good. That will hold until dawn or close to it. He pulls his hide tighter across his shoulders and goes back to watching the entrance. Outside, something has changed in the past few minutes. Not a sound. Actually, the absence of a sound. The cricket that has been making its slow, cold rhythm in the grass beyond the stone barrier has gone quiet. The watching man notices this immediately, the way you notice when a clock you've been hearing all night suddenly stops. He's very still. His eyes move to the entrance. His right hand finds the short spear beside him. 30 seconds pass. 45. The fire crackles. The sleeping people breathe. The world outside the cave is absolutely silent. Then, from somewhere above the cave, up on the limestone outcropping, maybe 30 feet overhead, there is a brief scrabble of claws on stone. Something small. Something that moved and dislodged a pebble, and then went still again. A marten, probably. Maybe a weasel. An animal that lives in the rock faces and hunts the mice and voles that forage near the cave entrance for crumbs and warmth. The cricket resumes. The man's hand loosens on the spear. He breathes. This is what cold survival actually looks like in the deepest part of the night. Not dramatic, not constantly terrifying. More like this, a long series of small assessments, small adjustments, small confirmations that everything is still all right. The fire is still burning. The entrance is still secure. The sounds beyond the barrier are still the sounds that belong there. The cold is still being held at the perimeter. And when one of those small assessments comes back wrong, when the fire is lower than it should be, or the sound from outside is a sound that doesn't belong, then the response is fast and practiced and competent. But mostly they come back right. Mostly the night is just the night. Mostly the cold stays where it belongs. There is a particular beauty to cold that is easy to miss when you are inside it and focused on surviving it. But that becomes apparent when you can describe it from a place of safety. The cold tonight has done something to the air that you would notice if you stepped outside for a moment. It has sharpened everything. The stars, already extraordinary in the dark Pleistocene sky, are even crisper at this temperature, their light arriving with an almost painful clarity, no atmospheric blur to soften the edges. The outlines of things on the plain, the ridge to the north, the dark mass of forest to the east, the slight depression that marks the river valley 2 miles away, are more defined than they would be on a warm night, the cold having squeezed something out of the air that usually exists between you and the horizon. The frost on the ground is genuinely beautiful. Every blade of grass has grown a coating of ice crystals that are, at the scale of a crystal, extraordinarily intricate. Hexagonal structures, branching, lacy, each one slightly different from every other one in ways that require magnification to appreciate. No one here has the magnification to appreciate them, but the overall effect, the ghostly silver shimmer of a frost-covered plain under starlight, is visible and real and experienced in its way by the watching man every time his eyes move across the landscape. He doesn't have a word for beautiful. Or perhaps he does. We will never know the vocabulary of this language, and assuming it was limited in any way is probably wrong. People who live surrounded by dramatic natural phenomena tend to have very rich vocabularies for those phenomena. There are languages with dozens of words for different qualities of snow, hundreds of words for the sea in different moods. The people on this plain may well have had a word, or several words, for the specific quality of frozen light on frozen grass at the stillest hour of a winter night. We just don't have it anymore. But the man watching the entrance has the experience of it. He is looking at it right now. And whatever the word is, whatever the concept is in the language of his people, something in him recognizes it as the kind of thing worth noticing, even on watch, even in cold, even in the practical, focused, survival-oriented frame of mind that the deep night requires. Some part of him looks at the frost and the stars and the vast cold stillness of the Pleistocene plain and registers. This is something. This is one of the oldest arguments for the continuity of human nature across all of recorded and unrecorded time. That in every culture, in every era, in every set of circumstances, humans notice the world around them not just instrumentally, not just as a source of resources or dangers, but aesthetically, as something that can be beautiful or terrifying or sublime, independent of its usefulness. That the experience of wonder is not a luxury that civilization added to the human package, but something that was always there, waiting, even in the depths of an ice age winter with a spear in your hand and the temperature at 28 degrees, and a very real chance that something large and hungry is currently moving through the darkness beyond the firelight. We are not fundamentally different from this man watching the frost in the dark. We have more insulation, better lighting, longer lives, faster information, more objects. But the part of us that stops to notice the frost, that feels something when the stars are particularly clear, that goes quiet in the presence of something enormous and old and indifferent to our small warmth, that part is the same part. It was always there. It will always be there. The fire holds. The cold holds its position at the entrance. The frost on the plain gleams quietly in the dark. The night moves through its coldest hours without breaking. Inside the sleeping area, the bodies have shifted over the course of the night into configurations that thermodynamics and instinct have conspired to produce. People who fell asleep on their backs are now on their sides. People who had a few inches between them and their neighbour now have none. The group has compacted slightly, the way a pile of warm things always compacts when the ambient temperature is cold enough. The edges retreating, the centre densifying, the total surface area of the group in contact with cold air shrinking as the night deepens. The older woman, the elder who everyone orbits, has been awake for a while, not anxiously. She sleeps, as old people often sleep, in shorter cycles, surfacing more frequently than the younger members of the group, spending more time in the shallow water between sleep and waking. She is in that place now, not asleep, not fully awake, but aware. Aware of the fire's warmth on her face, aware of the weight of the child who has migrated back to her side sometime in the last hour, aware of the sounds from outside, which she processes with the automatic fluency of long experience. She is not worried. She has survived more cold nights than she can count, and something in her, something built from decades of cold nights survived, is calm in the face of the temperature and the dark in a way that younger people in the group are not always calm. She is the reason, in part, that the group can sleep as well as it does. Calm is contagious. It moves through a group the way anxiety moves through a group, which is to say faster than thought and below the threshold of awareness. When the eldest person in the group is calm, the group is calmer. She lies still and lets the hours move through her without fighting them. Outside, the coldest point of the night arrives and passes, as it always does, in silence. Somewhere between 2 and 3 in the morning, the night reaches its deepest point. Not just in terms of temperature, though this hour is the coldest. Not just in terms of darkness, though the stars are at their highest, and the sky is at its most fully, completely black. The deepest point of the night is also a psychological and physiological phenomenon. Something shifts in the body, in the nervous system, in the quality of awareness, at this hour. Something that humans have been navigating since the beginning. In sleep science, this is the hour when the body's core temperature is at its lowest. The heart rate is at its slowest. The brain, for those who are sleeping, is generating its longest, slowest wave patterns, the deep delta waves of the most restorative sleep stage. This is the hour when, if you're asleep, you're most asleep, and if you are awake, you're most aware of being awake. And there is a particular quality to this hour that anyone who has ever kept a night watch, worked a night shift, sat up with a sick child, or simply been unable to sleep knows well. The world feels different at this hour, more exposed, more honest. The usual buffers that exist between you and the raw fact of existence, busyness, distraction, company, light, are all removed, one by one, until what remains is something very spare and very clear. Just you, just the dark, just the sounds of the world going about its ancient business without any particular regard for your comfort or your concerns. This is not a frightening place to be. Once you have been there enough times, it is simply a true place. A place where the pretenses fall away, and what you're left with is what there actually is. The people on the Pleistocene plain know this hour very well. They have been meeting it every night of their lives, and they have found, in the way that humans always find their way toward what they need, a relationship with it. Not a comfortable relationship necessarily, but an honest one. The man who was on watch near the entrance has been replaced. The changeover happened quietly, naturally, the way it always does. The incoming watcher touched the outgoing one's shoulder in the dark. The outgoing one nodded and moved to his sleeping space. The new watcher settled in without ceremony or delay. The watch must be continuous. The overlap is less than 30 seconds. It has always worked this way. The new watcher is a woman in her early 30s. She has a different style from the young woman who watched earlier in the night. Less the still, patient presence and more of an active, scanning alertness. Her eyes moving constantly over the dark plain rather than staying fixed on one point. Both approaches have their merits. Both have served the group well over many nights. Her eyes move. Entrance, left, right. The sky above the ridge, back to the entrance. A rotation as regular as breathing. At this hour, the plain is at its quietest. Even the owls have grown less vocal. The hyenas to the south went silent an hour ago. The wind remains still, and the absence of it is its own kind of presence, the world holding its breath or seeming to. The watching woman pauses her rotation and holds her gaze on the horizon to the northwest. She has seen something, or almost seen something. The peripheral flicker that might be movement, and might be the eye playing tricks on itself in low light. She does not move toward it. She doesn't call out. She watches the spot steadily for a long moment, her body completely still, her breathing controlled. The darkness at the horizon is just darkness. No movement resolves itself from it. No shape emerges. Whatever was there, if anything was there, has either stopped moving or was never moving at all. She holds the gaze for another long 30 seconds, then resumes her rotation. Entrance, left, right, ridge, entrance. The night continues. This is the particular discipline of the deepest hour. The tiredness is real. The body wants sleep the way a dry plant wants water, and at this hour the wanting is at its most acute. But the need for attention is also real, and these two things exist in tension in the watching woman's body, the way they exist in the body of anyone who has ever kept a vigil. You manage it by keeping the eyes moving, by the physical ritual of the rotation, by the structure that the watch provides, which is itself a kind of anchor against the drift. Inside the cave, the people in the deepest sleep are experiencing something that we know almost nothing about and can only infer. They are dreaming. What did people dream about 50,000 years ago? We cannot know. Dreams the most private of all human experiences, the one that leaves no physical trace, no residue, no artifact that can be excavated or analysed. But we can make some educated inferences, based on what we know about the neuroscience of dreaming and the psychology of people who live in close proximity to the natural world. Dreaming, at its most basic level, seems to be the brain's way of processing the emotional weight of recent experience. It takes what happened during the day and runs it through a different kind of processing. Not the linear, logical processing of waking thought, but something more associative, more symbolic, more concerned with emotional truth and factual accuracy. The brain is asking, what did that mean? How do I feel about it? Where does it fit in the larger story of my life? For the people in this cave, the recent experiences that need processing include the hunt that happened 2 days ago, the coordination, the near miss when the reindeer turned faster than expected, the kill, the long carry back to camp. They include the argument that happened yesterday afternoon between 2 of the men, still unresolved, sitting in the air of the group like a weather system. They include the particular cold of this night, which is deeper than recent nights and may be signalling the true beginning of winter. They include the child who's been coughing for 3 days, not badly, not in a way that frightens anyone yet, but enough to be noticed, enough to be carried in the background of several people's awareness. These things enter the dreaming mind and are transformed. The hunt becomes something else, a chase that changes landscape midway through, the reindeer becoming something larger and then something abstract. The argument becomes a confrontation in a different place with a different person, and then something that is no longer a confrontation at all, but a shared moment of standing on a high ridge looking at an enormous view. The child's cough becomes, in one woman's dream, the sound of rain, and the rain becomes something good, something that signals relief. The brain does not interpret these transformations. It generates them, and they move through sleep with the specific gravity of things that matter, even when the logic has been removed. And in the morning, most of this will be gone. Not all, some images will persist into waking, and people will describe them to each other around the rekindled fire, the way people describe dreams to those they trust, looking for echoes and resonances, looking for the feeling that someone else has been somewhere similar in the dark. Dreams are social in this way. They are one of the things the fire is for, one of the things the morning is for, but right now they are private, each person sealed in their own experience of the dark, each dreaming mind navigating its own version of the same landscape. The night sky at this hour is doing something that requires a moment of attention, even if the people in the cave are mostly too preoccupied with sleeping and watching to give it that attention. The Milky Way, which was arcing high overhead when the night began, has rotated. The Earth has turned beneath it, as it always does, as it has been doing for 4.5 billion years, and the galaxy has moved. The broad river of pale light that was nearly straight overhead at midnight is now tilted toward the western horizon, its core, the dense, brilliant centre that contains the supermassive black hole around which the entire galaxy orbits, hovering just above the tree line to the southwest. In another hour it will set, and the eastern sky, where it set at dusk, will begin to show the first, faintest precursor of the dawn. Not light exactly, not yet, but a slight reduction in the darkness, a barely perceptible difference in the quality of the black above the horizon. The stars that are rising in the east tonight are not the same stars that were rising last month. The sky is a calendar, and it is turning. The constellations that signal winter are climbing. The ones that belong to the transitional season are descending. Anyone who knows how to read it, and several of the people in this cave do know, have been taught, will teach. Their children can tell you the approximate date from the positions of stars alone, accurate to within a few days. There is a particular star, very bright, rising in the east right now. The people of this group probably have a name for it. They have probably been watching it since childhood, have learned what its rising means, what the month and season and behaviour of the animals will be in the weeks following its appearance. It is a navigational marker, a seasonal clock, a piece of information encoded in a ball of plasma 93 light-years away and read night after night by people who will never know what plasma is or what a light-year measures, but who know exactly what that star means and what they should be doing about it. The star rises, the night turns, the fire holds, and in the cave most of the people sleep through all of it, wrapped in hides, pressed close to each other, their brains doing the slow, essential work of restoration and meaning-making that is the other half of every human life, the half that happens when we are not paying attention, the half that we return to night after night without fully understanding what happens there or why we need it so badly. But we do need it. We have always needed it. And the people in this cave take it seriously in the way that people who live close to their own limits take everything seriously, not as luxury, not as indulgence, but as maintenance, as the necessary refilling of whatever gets emptied in a day of being fully alive in a genuinely demanding world. The watching woman at the entrance has been still for a long time, not the stillness of someone who has stopped paying attention, the stillness of someone who has fully inhabited the moment they are in. She is, in a word, present. Present in a way that very few modern people manage to be for very long, because modern life does not reward pure presence. It rewards multitasking, planning, checking, responding, anticipating. It rewards living anywhere other than the immediate moment. She has no access to any of those alternatives. There is only this, the cold against her face, the fire at her back, the dark plain beyond the entrance, the sleeping people behind her. That is the whole of her world right now, and she is entirely in it, not wishing it were different, not rehearsing something else, not divided between here and somewhere else, here, just here. It is possible that this is one of the things we've lost in the long progression from the Pleistocene to now, not the cold or the danger or the absolute dependence on fire, those we can happily do without, but the completeness of presence, the experience of being in a moment so thoroughly that there is no room for anything else, the particular kind of peace that comes not from comfort or safety exactly, but from undividedness, from being temporarily one thing in one place doing one thing. You cannot engineer that experience. You cannot buy it or schedule it or achieve it through an app. You can only find your way to it now and then, by accident or by practice, by sitting still long enough for the noise to pass through you and come out the other side, or by lying in the dark, listening to a world that is 50,000 years old and letting the watching woman on the other side of all that time keep watch for a while. She is good at it. She's been doing it her whole life. And tonight, in the deepest part of the night, she does it perfectly. The fire holds. The entrance holds. The darkness beyond the plain is simply the darkness. Enormous. Cold. Full of ordinary sounds that mean ordinary things. The people sleep on. The stars turn. The night moves through its most ancient hours in its most ancient way. Not every night on the Pleistocene plain is still. Not every night brings the clean cold and the windless dark and the frost-covered grass glittering under stars. Some nights the world reminds you, with considerable force, that it is not arranged for your benefit, that it has its own agenda, that the agenda is enormous, and you are not particularly central to it. Tonight, we have been fortunate. The wind died hours ago and has not returned, and the sky has stayed clear, and the cold has been manageable. But pull back from this particular night, from this particular cave on this particular plain, and look at the broader picture of what weather means in this world. Because weather, in the Pleistocene, is one of the primary facts of existence, one of the things that structures everything else. There are other nights when the storm comes. A Pleistocene storm is not like a modern storm, not in its scale, not in its sound, not in its relationship to the people experiencing it. When a major weather system moves across the Ice Age plain, there is no meteorologist to warn you it is coming. No weather app to check the morning before. No sealed building with central heating to ride it out in. There is only the storm and you and whatever you have managed to build between yourself and it. The sounds of a storm in this landscape are unlike anything most modern people have access to. Begin with the wind, which on a serious storm night can reach 50 or 60 miles an hour across the open plain. At that speed, wind has a voice. It is not a whistle. That sound requires something to whistle around, a narrow gap, a taut wire. The sound of 50 miles of wind across an open plain is more like a roar, a continuous, low, enormous roar with harmonics in it, overtones that shift as the gusts pulse. It sounds, to ears that have never heard it, almost vocal, almost intentional, as if something with lungs and a throat were making it. On a storm night, that sound fills the cave from entrance to back wall. It does not stop. It rises and falls with the gusts, but it never fully disappears, and the effect after an hour or two of it is cumulative. The sound becomes part of the atmosphere, part of the quality of the air, something you can feel in your chest as much as hear in your ears. The rain, when it comes with the wind, hits the stone face of the overhang with a force that is startling the first time you hear it, and becomes, over hours, a kind of white noise. Not gentle rain on a window pane. This is driven rain, sideways rain, rain that turns into sleet as the temperature drops and then into snow as the temperature drops further, the sound changing with each transition, the soft, constant hiss of rain on stone, the harder, more irregular sound of sleet, and then the silence of heavy snow, that particular muffled, absolute quiet that snowfall produces, as if the world has been padded with something. Inside a well-chosen cave on a storm night, the people are not comfortable, but they are alive, and aliveness on a storm night on the Pleistocene plain is the relevant metric. The fire is the critical variable. A fire in a storm requires attention that a fire on a calm night does not. The wind that finds its way through the entrance, around the stone barrier and the branch screen, creates unpredictable turbulence near the flame. The fire can gutter, flare sideways, send sparks into the sleeping area, or simply go out if it is not managed carefully. The fire tender on a storm night is not sitting quietly and watching the plane. They're working, adjusting the screen, building a small secondary windbreak from flat stones around the fire's base, managing the airflow with their body when necessary. It is skilled, continuous, exhausting work. And it is the only reason there is warmth in the cave at all. But there is something else that happens on a storm night that is worth noting. Something that the harsh weather produces paradoxically, that calm nights do not always provide. The group comes together. On a calm night, people drift. They move around the cave at their own pace. They conduct their individual small activities. They drift in and out of sleep on their own schedules. The watching is organized, but the rest of the group's activity has a loose, individual quality. People are together, but they are not always fully together. A storm changes this. When the wind is roaring and the rain is coming in at the entrance and the fire needs tending and the temperature has dropped and the darkness outside is full of a kind of violence that is impressive even from a position of relative safety, people move toward each other. Physically, they sit closer together. They talk more, not from nervousness exactly, but from the instinct to consolidate, to present a united front to whatever is happening outside, even when the front is only social rather than physical. On storm nights, the stories come out. There is a figure in this group who is the primary storyteller. Not the only one. Everyone tells stories. Everyone participates in the communal narrative life of the group. But the one who tells the long stories the ones that take hours, the ones that people have heard before and want to hear again. He is a middle-aged man with a particular quality in his voice, a rhythm to his speech that is hypnotic in the way that good storytelling has always been hypnotic. It catches you without you meaning to be caught, and then you are in it before you know it, inside the story's world, and it is more real for the moment than the storm outside. The stories he tells on storm nights are the old stories, the ones about the time before the group's memory, the time that exists only in the telling, in the version of events that has been passed from mouth to ear to mouth, across generations long enough that no one remembers who first told them. Stories about the world when it was younger or different, or when things were possible that are no longer possible. Stories about what the animals can do when no humans are watching. Stories about what happens in the high places where people do not go, and what happened to the people who went there anyway. No one in the cave can read. There are no books. The entire archive of everything this group knows, everything they have been, everything they understand about the world and their place in it, lives in the memories of its members and in the stories told around fires. This is the library, these are the books, and on storm nights, when the library is open and the storyteller finds his rhythm and the fire is bright and the storm makes the cave feel like the only warm place in the entire world, there is something in those stories that carries people through the dark hours and sets them down gently on the other side of morning. Tonight is not a storm night. Tonight is calm and cold and deeply still, and the sounds coming from outside are all the ordinary sounds of a functioning ecosystem doing what it does. But it is worth knowing, worth holding in the mind, that the people in this cave have been through the storm nights, have sat together and listened to the wind roar and told the old stories and come through to the other side. The storm nights are part of what makes the calm nights feel like this, full and warm and good. Outside, the frost-covered plain stretches away in every direction under stars that are beginning, ever so slightly, to have a different quality. The Milky Way has tilted further toward the western horizon. The eastern sky, if you're watching carefully, is still dark. Not yet, not for a while yet. But the darkness has a quality to it now, a particular shade of deep blue-black that is distinct from the true black of midnight. If you've been watching the sky long enough, all your life watching the sky, you recognize this shade. You know what it means. The night has turned its corner. The darkest hours are behind us now. What comes next is not yet dawn, not nearly yet dawn, but the long, slow, quiet approach to it. The night moving toward its own conclusion at the unhurried pace of a planet rotating on its axis once every 24 hours, as it has done for 4.5 billion years, as it will do for billions of years more after everyone listening to this voice has returned to the earth from which they came. The approaching dawn sounds different from the deepest night. It announces itself in sound before it announces itself in light, and the sounds come slowly, one at a time, each one a small promise. Before we walk toward the dawn together, if this journey has brought you any rest tonight, any peace, any of that rare feeling of being exactly where you need to be, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It genuinely means everything, and it makes sure the next time you need a long quiet night, like this one, you know exactly where to find it. Now, let's watch the light come back. The first bird calls while it is still completely dark. Not a full song, not yet. Just a single note, tentative, testing the air the way you test a floorboard in an unfamiliar house. One note, and then silence, and then 2 notes, and then silence again, and then a brief phrase, and then a longer one, and then the bird is fully committed and singing in the dark as if the sun were already up, as if the decision had been made and the dawn were already a fact rather than a distant possibility. This is the robin thrush, or something very like it. A small bird that has, since before recorded history, made the peculiar choice to begin singing in the pre-dawn dark rather than waiting for the sun like most of its relatives. No one has ever fully explained why. Possibly it is a territorial claim. Starting early means establishing presence before the competition has even woken up. Possibly there is something about the acoustic qualities of the pre-dawn air, before the wind picks up and the insects become active, that makes it a particularly good time to broadcast a song across the maximum possible territory. Possibly the bird simply cannot help itself. The light reaches some threshold, invisible to human eyes, that triggers the song before the song makes any practical sense. Whatever the reason, it works. The bird's voice in the deep pre-dawn dark has an effect on the sleeping cave that is almost physical. Without anyone waking, without any observable change in the quality of anyone's sleep, something shifts. The group is marginally less deeply asleep than it was 5 minutes ago. The sound has reached them somewhere below consciousness and registered there. Not as an alarm, the bird is not alarming, but as information. Something has changed. The night is moving toward its end. The fire has burned very low by now. What remains is a bed of coals, deep red-orange, glowing with stored heat that will last another hour or two, but that is no longer producing flame. The watching woman sees this and makes the calculation. Feed it, or let it die to embers and rebuild it at first light. She has enough wood to do either. She decides to feed it. One small piece. Just enough to coax a flame back from the coals. Just enough to maintain the light and the warmth for the group as they wake. She places the wood carefully, bending close, blowing one long, even breath directly at the base of the coals. The glow brightens, smoke rises. A small flame catches and begins its work. She sits back and watches it grow, and in the growing light she becomes aware of something she's been only peripherally aware of all night. She is tired, deeply, genuinely tired. The tiredness of someone who has been awake and alert for hours in the cold, who has been running the continuous low-level vigilance of the watch, who has done exactly what needed to be done, and is now, finally, approaching the point where it no longer needs to be done quite so carefully. The dawn is coming. The day watch will relieve her soon. She can sleep. The relief of that knowledge, the specific bodily relief of knowing that sleep is near, that you have done your part and can now let go, is one of the most particular feelings there is. Not the sleepiness itself, which is constant and available at any hour of the night, but the permission, the knowledge that the perimeter is about to be handed off, that you have held it for as long as you needed to hold it, that you can stop being the last line of defense between the fire and the dark. She has felt this feeling hundreds of times, and every time it is something close to joy. Outside, the pre-dawn sequence is underway, not visible yet. The eastern horizon is still dark, still deep, still night, but audible. The first bird has been joined by a second, then a third. The songs are different species, different frequencies, different rhythms, and they layer over each other in a way that is not quite harmonious, but is not cacophony either. It is the sound of a biological system waking up in stages, each species calibrated to a slightly different threshold of light, each song adding another layer to the morning's opening argument. The reindeer band that has been somewhere to the south has shifted. You can hear them if you listen carefully, the soft collective sound of large hoofed animals moving on frozen ground, the occasional low grunt that passes between individuals in a herd as a kind of continuous status check. They are moving north now, toward the morning grazing grounds, following a route that their hooves have worn into a track over many seasons. They pass a quarter-mile from the cave entrance without slowing, without looking toward the small ember glow in the limestone face. They know it is there. They know what it means. They are not interested in it this morning. The wolves that passed through earlier in the night are somewhere to the north, probably resting after whatever success or failure the night's hunting produced. The cave lion is back in his forest, sleeping the heavy, confident sleep of a large predator with a full stomach. The spotted hyenas have moved so far south as to be out of earshot entirely. The plain in the pre-dawn hour has a quality of suspension, of held breath, as if all the large dramas of the night, the hunts, the territories, the migrations, the endless negotiation between predator and prey, are pausing collectively for the moment when the light returns and the whole system resets and begins again. There is frost on the rocks just inside the cave entrance. The watching woman notices it for the first time. She was here when the frost formed, sometime in the deep, cold hours, but the watch does not allow for the kind of attention that noticing things like frost requires. Now, as the acute phase of the night eases, she sees it, the frost on the dark rock, pale and crystalline, catching the firelight from behind her, and the first, barely perceptible shift in the quality of the sky ahead of her. It is almost beautiful, the frost on the rock, almost like something that was made deliberately. She looks at it for a long moment. Then she looks back at the sky. There it is. The first suggestion of grey at the horizon. Not light, not yet, but the absence of the deepest black. The sky above the eastern ridgeline becoming a shade that is its own colour, neither day nor night, the specific colour of the world between. She has seen this colour every morning of her adult life, and it does the same thing to her now that it has always done. It loosens something. Some tension she's been carrying since the sun set that she was not fully aware of until the moment it begins to release. The night was held. The fire was held. The people behind her slept and are sleeping and will wake soon to a new day. The predators are retreating. The birds are singing. The plain is grey and silver and cold and completely itself, and the sun is coming. Inside the cave, the waking begins. Not all at once, slowly, in the way that people wake when they are wakened from genuine sleep rather than being dragged out of it. A person stirs, their eyes open, close, open again. They take a slow breath of the cave air, wood smoke and cold stone and the warmth of bodies, and the waking brain begins its daily task of reassembling the world from the information available. Where am I? It answers itself immediately. Here, the cave, the fire, the people. Another person stirs and another. The boy who fought sleep so hard last night is one of the last to wake. Children sleep later when they are allowed to, their bodies still doing a great deal of growing in the sleeping hours, their brains still processing an enormous volume of experience and learning. He surfaces slowly, with his eyes still closed, turning onto his back, his face relaxed in that morning openness. Then he opens his eyes and looks at the smoke-stained ceiling of the cave, and something in his face changes. It is morning. There are things to do. There are other children outside somewhere. The possibilities of the day are already visible to him, even through the ceiling of a limestone overhang. He sits up, looks around, finds the older woman's face in the firelight. She's looking at him with an expression that is not a smile exactly, but contains what a smile contains: warmth, recognition, the particular tenderness that exists between people who share sleeping spaces and survive cold nights together. The day begins, not in a rush, not dramatically. In the way that days have always begun on this plane, with the slow gathering of consciousness, the rekindling of the fire to a proper cooking height, the first sounds of conversation, the orientation toward what needs to happen next, who is going where, what is needed, where the herd was spotted last, what the weather looks like from the entrance. But before any of that, before the talking and the planning and the doing. Just this, the people in the cave, waking slowly in the light of a fire that held through the night, breathing the same cold air that their ancestors breathed in caves like this for hundreds of thousands of years before them, and their children will breathe in caves and then in houses and then in cities for hundreds of thousands of years after. Just this ordinary miracle of being warm and alive at the end of another night. The sun does not announce itself dramatically on the Pleistocene plain. It does not explode over the horizon in a burst of gold. It comes in the way that all important things come, gradually, then all at once. The grey at the eastern horizon deepens into rose. The rose widens slowly over the course of 10 or 15 minutes, spreading north and south along the ridgeline, bleeding upward into the darker sky above. The stars fade, one by one, the brighter ones last, until only a handful remain visible, and then those too are absorbed into the growing blue of the morning sky. The frost on the plain catches the first light, and for a few minutes the entire landscape glitters. Every blade of grass, every stone, every track pressed into the earth by the night's travellers, all of it lit from the side by a sun that is not yet visible, but is making its presence felt across the whole width of the horizon. Then the sun itself appears, not a disk yet, just a brightness at a specific point on the ridgeline, brighter than everything around it, too bright to look at directly. And then the rim of it, the absolute geometric edge of a star 93 million miles away, cresting the eastern hills of a Pleistocene landscape as it has crested them every morning since the hills existed. Orange at first, the way the sun always is at the horizon, the light travelling through the most atmosphere to reach your eyes and losing everything except the long warm wavelengths, then slowly yellowing as it climbs. The shadows it throws are enormous and horizontal, stretching every stone and stem and rise in the ground into a long western shadow that makes the plain look sculpted, dimensional, every small feature of the landscape made dramatic by the angle of the light. The people at the cave entrance are watching this. Not all of them. Some are still inside, tending the fire to cooking height, beginning the morning's work, but several of them are standing at the entrance looking east, and what is on their faces is not quite wonder. Wonder implies that something is unexpected, but something adjacent to it, something like appreciation, something like the recognition that this particular light, at this particular angle, on this particular morning, is worth stopping for, worth the minute it takes to simply be present to it before the day begins in earnest. They have watched 10,000 sunrises between them. They will watch thousands more. And yet the light still finds them. The frost still glitters. The shadow of the world still retreats westward as the sun climbs, and the morning still arrives with the specific quality of freshness that no other time of day quite replicates. The feeling that whatever happened in the dark is over, that the night was survived, that here is a new day, cold and clear and full of everything that needs doing, and there is time. The reindeer band has reached the morning grazing ground and spread out across the frost-covered grass, heads down, the steam of their breath rising in small clouds that catch the new sunlight. The eagle owl has gone to roost in whatever dark crevice it calls its sleeping place, done with the night's business. The fox that spent the early hours quartering the forest edge is curled somewhere under a fallen trunk, warming itself in the first direct sun of the day. The mammoth bull has long since reached his destination, whatever it was, and is standing somewhere to the north, perhaps at a frozen pond, perhaps at a mineral seep doing what mammoths do in the morning. The world reassembles itself in the light. The vast, complex, indifferent, magnificent system of this planet going about its 4.5 billion year business on a Tuesday morning 50,000 years before the invention of Tuesdays. The predators sleeping, the prey grazing, the birds laying their claim to the acoustic landscape of the morning, the river to the south moving under its skin of ice, carrying the snowmelt of the high country toward a sea that has no name yet and no country on its shores. And at the base of the limestone outcropping, the small group of people who came through the night are beginning their day. The fire is high now, doing the morning's work. Someone is cutting meat. Someone is checking the stone tools that will be needed for the day's activities. The children are already outside, already chasing each other around the frost-covered rocks at the cave entrance, already noisy in the way that children are noisy in the morning when the sun is out and the world is large and the night's restrictions have been lifted. The watching woman who held the deepest part of the night is asleep. She went down fast, the way people go down when they have earned sleep absolutely, and she is now in the most complete and deserved rest of the whole group. Her breathing deep and even and absolutely without concern for anything that is happening in the world, she is temporarily left. The day can proceed without her for a while. She has done what she needed to do. The morning took care of itself, as mornings always do when the night was held. This is what it was. Every night for hundreds of thousands of years before the cities and the electricity and the sealed rooms and the alarm clocks. People, fire, cold, darkness, watch. The negotiation with the night repeated endlessly, season after season, generation after generation, across every continent on this planet where humans spread their small, warm camps against the enormous dark. They were not small people. They were not simple people. They were fully human in every sense of the word, with everything that implies. The love of fire, the need for company, the weight of the dark, the relief of the dawn. You carry all of it. Every night that was held, every fire that burned through, every watcher who sat in the cold so that others could sleep. You carry it. It is in the wiring. It is in the part of you that still feels better near a fire, that still sleeps more soundly with the sound of another person breathing nearby, that still feels something loosen when the dawn comes and another night is over. Tonight you did not have to hold the watch. You didn't have to tend the fire or check the entrance or sit in the cold listening for the sounds that don't belong. Tonight you were the one who could sleep, and so you did. And the dawn came, as it always does, and the night was, as it always was, survived. Wherever you are in the world right now, whatever landscape is outside your window, whatever sounds are coming through the walls of wherever you are lying, the dawn will come for you too. It is already on its way. The earth is turning toward it, has been turning toward it all night, will bring it to you exactly as it has brought every dawn to every sleeping person in every cave and hut and house and city since the first human closed their eyes in the dark and trusted the morning to arrive. You're not the first person to lie in the dark and wait for the light. You will not be the last. But tonight, in this dark, in whatever warmth you've gathered around yourself, you're exactly where every human being has always been at this hour, at the end of the night, at the edge of the new day, in the old unhurried company of your own kind, going back further than memory goes. Let the dawn find you rested. Let the morning be new. Let the night be done. Sleep now. The fire held. The watch is over. The sun is coming. And the world, as it has always been, is still here.